SCAD can really happen to anyone and it can present in many different ways. On the day of my SCAD, I can recall my husband dropping me off about 5:30 to go in for dinner, and I have no further recollection after that point. Before my SCAD, I had no risk factors and no health conditions at all. At the time I was 36 years old and had no concerns at all with regards to my health. I was at home with my 17-week-old daughter. I felt tired, but then I was a new mum, I was breastfeeding, but it was generally a nice, easy day. That evening was my first opportunity to go out with my friends. We had dinner, we had a couple of glasses of wine, and absolutely everything was fine. There was no issues, they had no concerns. And one of them says, 1 minute I was there, and the next minute I was down on the ground. And so they immediately called an ambulance. And by the time they kind of got to me, they realised that I wasn't breathing, and they had to revive me to kind of bring me back using CPR. I very, very quickly then was transported to our local hospital. They realised that I needed to be put into an induced coma, and I think the next time I can really remember is probably 3 or 4 days later as I came out from my induced coma. Supposedly it took me a while to kind of come round from that, and I was asking the same questions over and over. By that point, the cardiologist had diagnosed it as being a SCAD, but what he said was that my heart looked like it had recovered and it was back to where it should have been. It had just decided it was going to stop. They'd managed to get it restarted and there was actually no real damage, and so it was just going to be a matter of kind of recuperating and recovering. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. That was quite difficult because I had a young baby, but the hospital staff there were amazing and really kind of supported me to make sure she could be with me every day. I was told at that point it would be the best decision would be to stop breastfeeding, which was quite difficult because it was something that I had hoped to do a bit longer. But at that time, I think I was so tired that actually it was a good way of helping me to be able to recover so that other people could support me. They suggested that a really good thing for me may be to consider having a subcutaneous ICD fitted, which is just a device very similar to the ones that you see now, a defibrillator on a wall, but it's an internal one that monitors your heart, and if anything ever happened again, that would kick in and perform the same function that a defibrillator does. I had that fitted, and the next day I was ready and they could send me home. It was a long journey and I was tired, even more tired with a baby. I needed a lot of support from family and friends. And I think one of the main things that's difficult is actually when you've had no warning and nothing's there, suddenly you think, what if it happens again? And even though you've got this device that's there is a fear, and I had a fear for many weeks and months of being on my own with the responsibility of a baby. As a result of having the ICD, I had to surrender my licence for 6 months, so I had no car and suddenly I had to find different ways to get around. And that made me getting out and meeting people really quite difficult. But actually I was quite happy just to stay with my close family and friends because they were the support mechanism and what I needed. In terms of my well-being, it's difficult. I think you still struggle. I don't think with any health condition you ever don't struggle. But for me, it was a matter of trying to get back to being healthy, making sure that I stayed healthy and looked after myself and tried to get as much sleep as I did. I was lucky to be able to go back to my job, but I did actually change my job to try and do something with a little bit less travelling. But it took me a couple of years to kind of get back and think I could go to a fitness class. And I do that now, but I always do it with other people. And I don't know if that's just that kind of feeling of wanting to have that security. We made decisions about our life. Me and my husband followed some advice of doctors that said any further pregnancies would be high risk. And even though it was something that we could have considered, we made the decision that we had one daughter. We were very lucky, and therefore we didn't want to do anything that would impact on that. That was difficult. That's had its challenges for everybody, but we're kind of happy and kind of settled with that decision now. My mother was a midwife for 40 years and had never heard of P-SCAD. She'd never heard of anything like this. So I think it's important that you're aware of it and check on some of those symptoms, and don't always assume that symptoms like pain in the arms or the chest or something are automatically going to be down to breastfeeding, or that tiredness is automatically down to having a baby, and just keeping in the back of your mind that it could be something else.